Here are just some of the companies taken over since 2002. Because of the free trade agreements, the manufacturing sector in Canada has been weakened considerably and will continue to be weakened as companies and corporations are sold off to foreign competitors and are then subject to cutbacks or closures. There have been no calls in Parliament, any legislature, the media, or the halls of the Academe for a Royal Commission on the consequences of our economic sovereignty from the unprecedented yard sale of Canadian industrial assets.
A community rates low on an information scale when the press, radio, and other channels of communication are controlled by only a few people, and when citizens have to accept what they're told. In communities of this kind, despotism stands a good chance.
Most ministers in the Stephen Harper government are not allowed to talk freely to the media, so there has been less public comment from the cabinet than at any other time in our history. Reporters must be on a pre-approved list before they are even allowed to ask questions. A 2006 Senate report on the media notes that no real democracy can function without a healthy, diverse, and independent news media to inform people about the way their society works. The argument is that in a democracy, government should foster healthy and independent news media.
The hypnotizing world of picture television brings us the news of the world through two central news agencies called Reuters and the Associated Press. The Rothschilds bought Reuters in the 1800s, which later bought the Associated Press and made the Rothschild family owners of the world's largest central news services. To the present day, the world depends on these Rothschild-owned central news services as their main source of news and information. In his book called Who Owns the TV Networks, author Eustace Mullins claims that the major TV networks, radio stations, newspapers, and publishing empires are controlled by the Rothschild, Rockefeller, and J.P. Morgan money cartels through their corporate conglomerates.
In Canada is interesting. We have the greatest concentration of ownership of the media in any major Western democracy by far. Not only is it a concentration of ownership of the media, but it is a cross-ownership as well, where in many markets the same people own the television stations and own the newspapers as well, which is something that would not be allowed in most other Western democracies. And the people who own most of these newspapers and most of these television stations are not only conservative and not only far right-wing, but they're falling off the right edge of the globe. They're very, very conservative people. So Canadians are misled almost every day on a daily basis in the stuff that they read. I want to say a few words about foreign investment. Of all the money that the new agency, Investment Canada, monitors for all this foreign direct investment that's come in since FIRA was abolished, $847 billion to the end of March of this year, a crummy 2.4% was for new business investment. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't see how we can be a country and keep selling off our high-tech companies in and around Ottawa or in and around the Fraser Valley or across the country, and our natural resources. The manufacturing sector in Canada is now majority foreign-owned. Our oil and gas sector is now majority foreign-owned. And we've got 36 different sectors of the Canadian economy that are majority foreign-owned and controlled. Anybody want to take a guess as to how many there are in the United States? Zero. There isn't a single sector in the United States economy that is majority foreign-owned and controlled.
The chart says it all. Canada has more of its manufacturing industry under foreign control than any other OECD country.
What I did, John,
Mel is referring to the Right Honourable John Turner, Prime Minister of Canada in 1984, who, as leader of the opposition in 1988, gave a truly inspired, impassioned speech on behalf of our country. Here is an excerpt from that speech. Mr. Speaker, we are here today to discuss one of the most devastating pieces of legislation ever brought before the House of Commons, a bill which will finish Canada as we know it. It is a dream come true for the Americans. At long last they found a government in Ottawa dumb enough, stupid enough, patsies so craven in the face of American demands that they just caved in to every request made of them. I say to the people of Canada, this is not a trade deal. This is the Sale of Canada Act.
Nobody knows who paid for these meetings. Nobody knows who sponsored them, and they're being held in secret. Well, I sent these details of these meetings out to the press. I sent it out to Global Television and to the CBC Television and to CTV Television. I sent it out to the Globe and Mail. I sent it out to the National Post. I sent it out to the Can West newspapers. They weren't interested. Meetings to integrate Canada into the United States with so many famous people attending, they were not interested in the story. What does that tell you about the media in this country?
Media coverage of the top-level security and prosperity partnership meetings to further integrate Canada beyond NAFTA into the U.S., attended by our prime ministers, deputy prime ministers, finance ministers, members of the military, and many others from Canada, the United States, and Mexico, were essentially ignored by the media.
We're here at a hotel in Ottawa early on the day of August 20, 2007. Later in the day, the meeting of the Security and Prosperity Partnership will occur. We are not in Montebello, where the meeting is being held. The reason we are not there is quite simple. The proceedings are being held behind closed doors. We and other opponents are not welcome. Unlike the national leaders gathering in Montebello, however, we have nothing to hide.
So what exactly is the Security and Prosperity Partnership, and why all the fuss?
Well, the Security and Prosperity Partnership is an agreement that was entered into in 2005 by our then Liberal Prime Minister Paul Martin, U.S. President George Bush, and then Mexican President Vicente Fox. It was then reiterated in 2006 when Prime Minister Harper was elected. So this is something that crosses party lines.
The SPP is an agreement for certain working groups to take over certain aspects of Canada, America, and Mexico's society, various aspects of industry and legal aspects and governmental aspects, and to essentially harmonize them is their word. Now, harmonize is an Orwellian term for merge. So these independent, unelected working groups are getting together and they are drafting agreements that will affect all of us in North America by merging our various bureaucracies and various government agencies, as well as corporate and trade policy that without our permission. And since we live here, since we are people who work in these jobs and work for these corporations and vote for politicians to represent us in government, it's a real tragedy that we don't have any input into these massive changes being planned.
Well, I don't know too much about it partly because it's really been quite secretive, and I don't think many people except the people on the inside of it know too much about it. But what we do know is that it's basically it kind of picks up where the North American Free Trade Agreement and other attempts to sort of push us closer to the U.S. Leave off. It's an attempt to integrate the economies and the power structures of Canada and the U.S. and Mexico more than they already are. And we know that it's being driven by the corporate elite and with the cooperation of all three governments.